I look at myself through a lens that has been clouded with fungus, littered with my own expectations of myself and setting precedent that I can only accept my work or myself if I meet those expectations. There are conditions around whether or not I see myself positively, but what would unconditional positive regard look like? All right. Before this video gets started, just wanted to do a little housekeeping. I wanted to say thank you for those of you who have been riding with me since the first video. This is only number 3, but I do appreciate the views. And please remember to subscribe, press the bell so that you get the notifications that I've posted, because you know the algos be rhythming. So make sure you subscribe so you get my videos. And don't forget to like, comment, and share if you think that what I have to say is relevant and useful. Now, as you can tell, I am in a different space than I normally am than my walking and talking videos. However, that doesn't change the content. I am in the process of trying to set up this room in this apartment I just moved into to be a media, music-y type room. For those of you who don't know, I also make music on another channel, and I will put that somewhere for you to click on. Go check out, subscribe there too. I also want to say that I am going to heavily rely on my little notes here today, because I want to make sure that I say all that I want to say, and I want to bring quality. So without further ado, let's jump in. To get the full context of this video, if you're new to me just now, I encourage you to watch the first 2 videos so that you understand some of the things that I'm going to mention in this 3rd video. And this will probably be true for at least the next 2 videos that I post. Over the past few years, I've realized that I have a deficit-based view of myself. Or I'm always focused on what I don't have or what I can't do. And I'm not necessarily talking about in the physical sense, in the material sense, but more so in my abilities or in my character or in me as a person. My first video talked about expecting myself to bounce back in my counseling abilities after spending 2 years in an environment that had dulled my abilities. And I had to realize it was unrealistic because it took 2 years for me to fall off, but I was expecting to be back in 2 months. There's incongruence there. We're often our own worst critics. And my criticism of myself comes in the form of perfectionism and not living up to my perfectionism. But what is my definition of perfectionism? Well, to figure that out, actually, I'm going to read what perfectionism is according to the APA, the American Psychological Association. According to the APA, it's the tendency to demand of others or oneself an extremely high or even flawless level of performance in excess of what is required by the situation. It is associated with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and other mental problems. In simple terms, it's having unnecessarily high expectations. I've heard people say that comparison is the thief of all joy, but I argue that unmet expectations is the real culprit, especially when you or I are the perpetuator of those expectations on ourselves. Because when something is put in place for you, by you, and then you don't live up to it, it's like saying, maybe I don't really know myself because I set this expectation that I wasn't able to meet, which also can lead to imposter syndrome, which I also touched on in my first video. But how has perfectionism manifests for me? Well, I'm a person who always has the answers, and generally people treat me as such. Over my 2-year regression period, I stopped having all the answers because I was no longer engaging in the work that I set out to do, which was to be a good counselor. And watch my first video for the full context of this. But I was no longer doing the work that I set out to do, the heart of the work. I had gotten bogged down with all of the extras or other duties as assigned, and was not able to focus on the heart of the work. So what happens is I withdrew from certain conversations and certain situations because I was no longer meeting the expectation. At that point, I wasn't meeting my own expectations, and I wasn't meeting the expectations that people had come to know that they could rely on me for. So that is one way that my perfectionism manifests: withdrawal. If I don't think that I can do something correctly, or in my definition of what correct or right is, then I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to engage in it. And I'm going to practice hella task avoidance. Perfectionism is the main contributor to my deficit-based view that I've held of myself. Because one, I don't give myself space or time to go through different phases of life. My perfectionism tells me that my abilities and the things that I do or can do should always be static and unchanging, when I'm living a life that's not static. So that goes back into the unrealistic expectation that I had to bounce back. For those of you who have been around from the beginning, you know that I'm on a journey for passion and fun, a quest to find fun again and to find out what I actually consider fun. I haven't done a whole lot between now and the previous video, but I did go to the gun range with my fiance. and he has 2 muskets, which I believe by definition are not considered firearms anymore because they're so old. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But there are 2 things that I learned from engaging with the musket. 1, I watched him prepare everything for me, but don't ask me the steps or the names of any of these tools that he used, because that's above my pay grade. But I watched it. He's finally swabbing the ball into the barrel, and he pours a little bit of black powder so that the flint can create a spark and ignite the powder and propel the ball out of the barrel, creating a boom. So he's finally finished preparing it, and he hands it to me. Now, I cock back, let it rest against my shoulder, prepare for the recoil. I line up what I know is going to be the perfect shot. And I put my hand on the trigger. I have my sights in the correct spot. Pull the trigger, expecting a boom. But instead, I only got, man. So the day was a bit muggy. It was partly cloudy. And we are in Florida, so sometimes it's just humid in general. But black powder does not like moisture. So what happens is that when it gets a little damp, it can misfire. And what I learned from this is that I can have all the knowledge, I can have done all the correct preparation and have all the skills and the tools that I need. But if I'm in the wrong environment, it'll cause me to misfire. Maybe once in a while I get a boom, but it's never going to be consistent if I'm in the wrong environment. And I also learned in this that there's nothing wrong with me if I don't get a boom in an environment that has dampened me. 2, the musket taught me patience, or I should say is teaching me patience, because it is a process. But everything is not automatic. See, my pistol is semi-automatic, but there are automatic weapons that just, rapid release. But with the musket, you have to take time. There are steps involved between each firing. So me regaining my faculties is not going to be an automatic process, because it was a gradual regression. And it's going to be a deliberate, intentional progression that's going to get me back where I want to be. And finally, I'm not in a state of deficit, but sufficiency. Thank you for watching. I'll catch y'all in 2 weeks.